Well, folks, we got another new hero drop. This time it's 3 new purple heroes with some very unique abilities, and they are available to every kingdom in the game, regardless of server age. That means if you're watching this in the future having just started, you'll now have 8 purple heroes to choose from instead of the original 5. Having done some internal testing on these 3 heroes, Fahad, Yanu, and Amane, I can say for sure that we need to reshuffle the purple hero priority list. I also was certainly surprised by how these 3 heroes were classified given their relative performance in combat. Accordingly, I'm going to be walking through these new heroes and their abilities one by one, and I'll be updating my purple heroes build priority list at the end. So no matter where you are in your Kingshot game, this video guide will help you make the right investment. Before jumping into each hero, let's quickly look at how their stats compare. You can see that all of the new heroes have exactly the same stats as the other purple heroes of the same class for both Conquest and Expedition. The only exception to this is Diana, who has weaker Expedition stats, but makes up for it in other ways. So this view already helps bring us to one major implication of these heroes. If your kingdom is already well into your 2nd or 3rd generation of orange heroes, then these new purple heroes will only be situationally helpful to you in Conquest or Arena, since you likely won't have much room for these new heroes that do not have the higher stats of the later generations. However, you will still like them a lot for their Expedition abilities. If you're just starting out, however, then these new purple heroes definitely shake up both the Expedition and combat prioritization quite a bit. Let's go through them one by one to understand why. First, let's talk about Fahad. Of the 3 new heroes, he's the only one listed as a combat hero, so we should have high expectations for his role in this domain. If we look at his signature ability, Sandstorm, it sounds pretty interesting on paper because it reduces all enemy squads' attack. So if we read this at face value, it should include the escort troops of the enemy, not just the enemy heroes. So one might think this is actually a powerful move. It's hard to be certain exactly how impactful a 5% damage reduction would be since the developers keep the damage formula a secret. Presumably it's some ratio of attack to defense rating. However, if we look at other purple heroes' abilities for context, 5% seems rather small. Consider an equivalent rarity hero like Quinn, who self-buffs his own damage by up to 30%, and this is before any signature ability multiplier, which can be quite high. So this makes a 5% reduction, albeit for the entire enemy field, feel like it comes up a bit short. However, my main issue with this ability is not the reduction value, but rather how short the uptime actually is. This ability only lasts for 2 seconds. For context, it takes him 7 seconds into combat to even cast this ability, and 9 seconds for him to cast it a second time. So if this ability is only active for about 2 out of every 8 seconds, that means 75% of the time he's not reducing incoming damage. With how quickly Conquest and Arena battles can be decided, this is unforgivable. His second ability does help improve things a bit. It adds an area buff of 35% attack, which again presumably includes escort troops. This is actually a pretty massive buff when you consider that most heroes' signature moves are based on multiples of their attack value. However, the timing issue again comes back to haunt us. Many of the other heroes can actually trigger their signature abilities quicker than he can, which means if you're letting the game auto ability for you, which is what you're forced to do in Arena by the way, then you probably aren't getting the benefit of this due to the short uptime. I can also see how manual usage of this in Conquest mode might be impactful if you combo it with other heroes' signature abilities, but with how fast this combat mode goes, even waiting a few seconds of withholding your other hero's signature moves might cost you the battle. So overall, as much as I like the concept of the role they're trying to carve out for Fahad, I just can't get to the point where I see him making a meaningful difference in the battle outcome versus another hero who could take that slot. And his third ability is sort of the nail in the coffin for me. Yes, it increases his attack speed by 30%, but the whole premise of this hero is to help other people do damage, not himself. So unfortunately, this skill is a bit of a mismatch. If we look at his Expedition mode skills, the first one, Desert Eclipse, reduces enemy damage dealt by 20%. This is actually slightly better than Jabel's first Expedition skill, Rally Flag, which has a 40% chance to reduce 50% damage taken. And I say this for two reasons. While Jabel's 50% chance of 40% damage reduction is statistically identical to a flat 20% decrease, the phrasing of the skill description is not exactly the same. Since the devs keep the damage formula secret, it is unclear if reducing enemy damage dealt is the same as reducing your damage taken. My hypothesis is yes, but if true, that makes them equivalent. If false, it means mathematically the ability reducing damage dealt would be superior to reducing damage taken, since this would imply some sort of damage reduction due to defense as an intermittent step in the damage calculation. And secondly, since Fahad's ability is not percentage chance based like Jabel's, it can stack if multiple rally joiners put him into their first hero slot. With both of these things in mind, we can say that Fahad's first skill is at least as good as Jabel's first skill, possibly better. But as you will see in a moment, he doesn't have many other complementary abilities like Jabel does for him to bump her out of best in slot cavalry hero at game launch. And while he might have an advantage over Jabel as a rally joiner, where the other skills don't matter as much, this move is about on par with Howard reducing damage taken by 20%. I say on par because of the difference in wording between damage taken and damage dealt, but if you watch my controversial Purple Heroes guide, linked below in the description, then you know that both of these lose out to Gordon's 25% health ability. So while there might be some edge cases where you want to put him in the first position for a defensive rally where you're not the captain, you are probably already building Howard for Arena and might as well just invest in him over Fahad. And to finish off Fahad's last skill, Pathfinder is very similar to Diana's last skill, Quick Pace, except that her skill explicitly says it includes rallies, while his only says solo marches. I suppose it can be helpful to add to a march with Diana to get her back more quickly for using her own stamina ability, but this is such an edge case that I just can't see this being a priority. Okay, I beat up on poor Fahad enough. Let's go to the next hero, Yanu. I'm going to start on the right-hand side with her expedition skills. These are just too insane to wait. Her first position skill is On Guard, which is a 25% lethality buff and identical to Chenko's. I don't know why the ability is named something that sounds defensive, but I'm too excited about this to care anyway. This is an amazing first position skill for joining rallies, and it will define the entire meta for events like Bear Trap and various PvP expedition content, since now free-to-play players will have two heroes that can stack lethality boosts. This means she'll have a ton of longevity if you invest in her. Honestly, I can't believe they gave this ability to a growth hero, and not the only combat hero, Fahad. And Well Traveled is another amazing ability, and the reason she's labeled a growth hero. It's a 15% buff to research speed. Now don't get me wrong, this is must build and will definitely help growing your account, but it also isn't as good as it sounds because research bonuses are calculated additively, not multiplicatively. By this I mean you don't take your current research speed and multiply it by 1.15. Instead, you add all your other research speed buffs together and multiply your base speed at once. So in my case, her level 4 skill has helped me already go from about a 48% increase in research speed to about a 60% increase. This is still amazing, however, since my entire growth research tree, which is almost maxed, is contributing 21.7% to research speed. So with all of that context, this is absolutely a must-build skill. Alright, let's talk about her in Conquest and Arena. Before we get into skills, I'll start with the obvious. Even though she's dual-wielding blades, she's an archer hero and her attacks do work at range, so no need to worry about her running up into the fray. Petal Bloom is an interesting multi-phase attack. It's 2 single-target attacks followed by an area of effect. I actually think this is a better move than Diana's for clearing out enemy troops. The first 2 attacks sum up to 275% attack bonus versus Diana's 290%, and they do have to pass through enemy defenses twice, but this difference gets offset by another skill of hers we'll look at in a moment. However, that final attack that does 210% damage will more reliably clear out a group of enemies than Diana's 98%. This is almost on par with Jabel's Gallant Throw, which has a slightly higher damage multiple on a slightly higher base attack. The only downside is that this has a 9-second cooldown, so you'll only likely get 2 to 3 uses out of this in a battle. The second ability is a damage dealing move that reduces enemy attack speed. Sounds good in theory, but most of the time she will be targeting the enemy front line who are likely not the ones doing the most incoming damage. It also won't slow down their signature abilities from triggering. So unless you're somehow targeting a high damage dealing front line, like an opponent who put Amadeus in the front row, this move won't be as impactful as you might think it would be. Then her last move is a 24% attack buff. This is not as high a number as Quinn's 30% damage buff, but it applies to base attack, not damage, which would be reduced by enemies' defense first. So this is actually quite a solid passive ability that makes her signature ability far surpass Diana's fully and puts it more on par with Jabel's. So overall, she has quite a useful ability kit, especially for an early game free-to-play player. And finally we get to Amane, another archer class hero who does not look like she has a ranged weapon. Let's again start with her expedition skills, since these are a bit more straightforward. Her first skill is Tri-Phalanx, which is a 25% attack buff to all troops. This is one that she will provide to rallies if you are a rally joiner. On the surface, it sounds like it might be a good move to contribute to something like Bear Trap, but remember that attack boosts are not as powerful as lethality boosts. If you're unclear why, then go check out my Ultimate Combat Guide, linked below in the description. So if you were to add her to a Bear Trap, then you could be bumping out the contribution of a lethality boost of Chenko or Yanu or Amadeus. And now that free-to-play players will have 2 out of those 3, the likelihood of bumping out a superior hero has become much higher. So this can actually reduce your total damage in Bear Trap if you aren't careful, and should only be used if your alliance is highly coordinated in forming rallies. Exorcism is the standout ability of this growth hero. She provides up to a 50% increase in healing speed for your troops. Again, it's additive and not multiplicative, just like Yanu's research buff. And given how many other sources of healing buffs there are, especially the new Oasis Island, you'll be more likely taking your healing speed from something on the order of magnitude of 300% to 350% increase. So don't expect your troops' healing to be that much faster because you max this ability, but it's still a worthwhile investment. And on the Conquest ability side, we start with the Sakura Blossom. Like Fahad's first skill, it has the same 7-second start time to cast, followed by a 9-second cooldown. But this time it lasts for 4 seconds instead. So you can roughly expect this buff to be up for half the time of the battle, and provide a small attack and attack speed buff to all heroes and escorts. It's a small buff, but it impacts a lot of folks. However, if your opponent had a bunch of area effect attacks that wipe out your escorts, then this would be much less effective. But I could still see this being useful situationally, more likely in trying to push on Conquest levels where you can experiment a bit as opposed to Arena. Her second ability, Fire Sigil, gives her an additional move with damage equal to 210% of her attack value. There's nothing special here, honestly. Certainly not anything at Quinn levels of damage dealing potential. And lastly, we have Divine Melody. This is an interesting attack that continues to bump up her attack speed over the course of battle. However, we should compare this to Quinn, who comes with a 30% attack speed buff at the start of battle. Amane would need to be up for 18 seconds in order to just be at the same attack speed as him. And at that point, the battle's probably already been decided. So I just don't see this one really changing the outcome of battle in a meaningful way. So let's take a step back a bit and think about the strategic implications of where to invest. 2 things are pretty clear to me after these hero reviews. 1, the purple hero meta has definitely changed and requires a new investment priority. This is especially important for players on new servers, since this is where people will be the most resource constrained with hero shards and skill books. Secondly, I sort of feel like the hero classifications made by the developers are a bit misleading given their role. The only combat hero, Fahad, is, in my opinion, the worst at arena combat out of the 3, and doesn't really add anything meaningful to expedition combat. Meanwhile, the 2 growth heroes come with strong combat skills in their first skill slot for expedition, and Yanu in particular is also great for combat in arena and conquest modes. So in order to make sense of all this, I'm updating my purple hero investment priority list. And again, I'll be looking at this through 2 lenses, one for expedition and one for conquest, especially since they use separate skill books. My guiding logic behind both of these lists is simply which heroes will have the greatest compounding effects that accelerate the progression of your account for an equivalent cost of investment. This has led to controversial picks in the past, which I won't be re-justifying here. So if you have a question about why Howard, Gordon, or Diana are placed where they are in either of these lists, then you'll definitely need to check out my controversial Kingshot Purple Heroes guide, linked below in the description. So let's start with the Expedition priority list, since this will be more likely to accelerate your game than the Conquest priority list. In the first priority section, I have added Yanu, and this should come as no surprise given her two amazing Expedition abilities. While I'm not taking a hard line on order within a given priority bucket here, I do sort of see her being ever so slightly higher than Chenko, given you get 2 abilities as a return on investment for raising her, instead of Chenko's 1. Interestingly, it also takes 30 fewer shards to unlock her than Chenko, so you can grow her a little bit quicker through the early star levels. Therefore, if you have epic general hero shards you're looking to use, maybe prioritize Yanu over Chenko. Diana shards will already be coming extremely quickly from her event, so even though more efficiently converting stamina to resources in the early game is a huge accelerator, I would typically not use the general hero shards on her. One other minor note, don't pay any attention to the levels that appear under the skill icons for the new heroes on my infographic. You should be bringing them all to level 5 like I plan to. This is just what they happened to be at the time I was taking screenshots in game to prepare this video. If we now move into the second priority, I've added Amane's troop healing skill to Gordon's health boosting ability. While boosting infirmary healing speed is a very helpful skill, it's just not as high priority as the ones above. Firstly, there are many ways to increase this already, especially early game research projects that are quick and cheap to complete. Secondly, it just doesn't help accelerate your tempo as much as the other skills here, since low tier troops are quick to heal, and you likely won't have that many to heal until you get deeper into PvP content anyway. Similarly, I put Gordon's skill ever so slightly ahead of Amane, since helping both your troops and your alliance's troops survive longer means you can change the outcome of battles and not have to heal as much anyway. But you should definitely aim to max both skills. And then finally, on the lowest priority, I have added Fahad. His ability is on par with the first Expedition skill of Gordon and Quinn, but all 3 of them lose out to Gordon's ability. To be clear, that doesn't mean don't build them. As you'll see in a moment, the list looks a bit different when we get to Conquest and Arena. This instead means that they just have less impact on the Expedition side of the game, and you should prioritize the skill books elsewhere. I put Howard at the top of this block because he's the only purple infantry hero, so if you are completely free to play, you might still need him just for the stats in Expedition mode, which may mean some low investment in his Expedition skills can help you in combat ahead of some of these other ones. Now if we talk about Conquest mode, I'm adding in Yanu to the top priority bucket. This one is probably also a bit controversial like Diana, but bear with me. If you follow the logic that Diana is a top priority hero given how easy it is to get her shards and her area of effectability, then it also makes sense to include Yanu, who has a significantly more powerful AoE, and who would be getting a lot more general shards than a Quinn or Gordon or even Chenko due to her impact in Expedition mode. So I would argue that we should also use this to our advantage in Conquest and Arena, particularly if you are free to play and don't have many other resources to build on or orange heroes at your disposal. When you have built all the purple heroes, I still see room for subbing out Yanu for other damage dealers like Quinn or Chenko depending on the lineup you're facing. However, this list is about which investments are going to accelerate your account most efficiently, and Conquest mode only really has an impact on account growth in the early days of a server to quickly increase your idle rewards. Otherwise, Expedition mode steals the show. Hence, I constructed a priority list that acknowledges that fact. The second priority remains unchanged with the other heroes that I think make great substitutes once you've had a chance to build them all up. Again, these are all solid heroes for combat mode, but we do need a priority of where to build, and this is where I draw the line. And finally, I've added a new low priority tier with our 2 new heroes, Amane and Fahad. Amane is here because she significantly lags behind Quinn as a single target damage dealing archer, and her buffing ability just does not have enough power to make up for it. So at this point, there are already 3 other purple archer heroes you are building before her, and that's without considering the orange hero Sol. So I just don't see her playing a meaningful role in accelerating your conquest journey. And Fahad, well, I'm not going to beat up on him again. He's a really cool character concept, but the execution of it is such that he significantly lags behind other heroes in influencing the outcome of an arena battle. If any Kingshot developers are watching this, then please give this poor guy a buff or something in a future update. And viewers, let me know in the comments if you have a very different take on either of these priority lists, including who's working for you and who's not. I know it's early days since the expanded purple heroes have joined, and I'm trying to balance timely information with comprehensiveness, so it's possible I missed something in my testing. Finally, it's good to remember that this priority list, as well as the expedition one, are only for purple heroes. There are many other heroes available to you both at the start of the game and as you continue your Kingshot journey, so definitely check out the rest of my hero reviews playlist if you haven't already to ensure you are making the most of all of your hero investments. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this helpful. Thanks again for watching, and happy gaming out there.